Well, it wasn't always pretty, and those first 40 minutes on the road still seemed to be a challenge for the Kraken, but they got the job done. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Kraken make it interesting in their first game of 2 against the Ducks here before Thanksgiving, but they win it in Anaheim 3-2, scoring first in this game, which is not something they've done a ton this season, but still having to mount a third period comeback to end up coming away with the victory. At the end of the day, a win is a win. It's 2 points in the standings no matter what. But again, it's worth mentioning this is not the best 2 points the Kraken have earned or will earn all season long, as once again, for the first 40 minutes or so of another road game, it was a bit of a challenge for the Kraken. They were not looking particularly crisp. Large portions of those first 2 periods just generally sloppy anywhere past their own blue line. Certainly transitioning from defensive end through the neutral zone into offensive end was not something the Kraken were making look particularly easy. The good news, at least for them in this one, is that they were playing against a not so great Anaheim Ducks team. So although the Kraken weren't playing their best hockey for those first 2 periods, certainly at least in the second period, they still managed to outplay a Ducks team that was, well, looking like the way their record would make you think they're playing. And I suppose the other piece of good news for the Kraken is that with Decord in net, and as we get into some more specifics about how these first 40 minutes go and get into the game a little bit more, there was one Kraken skater at the very least that showed up to play on time in this one, and it makes sense. He's had a while to rest up and get ready for it, as Shane Wright re-enters the lineup as he centers a line, well, a couple different lines as the night went on, but mostly between Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand. And right away in the first, or at least right away once the two teams actually started playing the game, there wasn't a shot on goal for almost the first 7 minutes of the game. The Ducks got one that, quite honestly, I don't even remember it happening, so it can't have been terribly high danger, but they got awarded a shot. Then back the other way, it's the right line out on the ice. They get the puck down the ice, cleanly through the neutral zone and into the offensive end, get set up, cycle it once. Evans way up by the blue line at the point, gets it down to Bjorkstrand for a one-time shot, still well out from the goal at the top of the face-off circle, with the Ducks having in net Dostal, who, to this point in the season, has been one of, if not statistically, the best goaltender in the NHL. So, a shot with no traffic from that far out, he'll make the easy save, but as it turns out, there is traffic in front of the net. It's Shane Wright standing right in front of Dostal. He gets his blade on that shot from Bjorkstrand, which ramps off of his blade over the pad and into the net to give Wright 7 minutes into the game, his second of the season, and get him right onto the scoring sheet after having missed the 3 games being a healthy scratch, following a bit of a dry spell and the coaching staff just wanting him to have a chance to reset and get back to playing his game. And certainly, at least here early on in the first, he did just that, as he does the one big thing that I talked about being an issue for the Kraken with the lack of offense in that game against the Kings, and well, it kind of has been a theme with the Kraken when they do have a lack of offense, is they just are not going to the net enough. And what do you know, but right back in the lineup does just that and gets rewarded for it right away, scoring to the right of Dostal, which, as it turns out, would also be just the spark the Kraken needed to continue to play generally mediocre hockey or worse for the rest of the first period. They do end up getting a power play, but just play right with the Ducks. The power play doesn't go much of anywhere. Then they send the Ducks to a delayed call. The Ducks maintain possession for quite a while as they slowly roll a change. And then just as Everett Fitzhugh, who was on the broadcast for this game with Forsland off on national broadcast duties somewhere else. Either way, right as he makes a comment that the Ducks aren't doing much of anything with the delayed call, they go straight down the ice and with the extra man find some empty space, and the guy that finds the empty space is the one guy you really don't want to have it on the Ducks, or certainly one of their younger players that you really would not like to have that much empty space. It's Zegras from the middle of the slot, and he beats Decord high over the blocker to get the Ducks on the board, avoiding the power play and tying the game back at 1. Now, I suppose to the credit of the Kraken, they do respond to this Ducks goal with a pretty good push, nearly scoring on Dostal. He comes up with a pretty good save, and the Kraken also hit a couple of posts, which would be a bit of a theme through the first 2 periods of the game at the very least. But we get to the end of 1 in a pretty low event first period. Certainly the no shots on goal through the first almost 7 minutes of the game helped it, but by the end of 1, the score's tied at 1, and there's only 12 total shots, with each team having 6. Surely, though, things will be different for the Kraken in the second period, right? They'll get things rolling, and, well, They were different for the Kraken in the second period. They didn't score while the Ducks do score one more time. It comes just a few minutes into the second period off a face-off in the Kraken end of the ice. The Ducks win it back cleanly, cycle it around the net once, and then as it comes back to right around, I think, where the face-off was taken, a shot on net is saved by Decord, but the rebound goes right out to the top of the slot where Vatrano is just standing there completely alone, lost in the defense as Alexiak left him so he can go clog up a passing lane or try to block this shot. Neither one ends up happening though. The rebound goes right out to Vatrano, who, with Montour not picking up what Alexiak was doing, has also left him open. He's on the other side of the crease. Vatrano all alone at the top of it. He's able to get that rebound and put it in without really much of anything that Decord or anyone else can do about it. Maybe you would like to see Decord control the rebound a little bit better, though I don't necessarily think he was expecting for a Duck player to be the one that was all alone at the top of the crease. Just like that, it's 2-1 Ducks, as they've come back from that early Kraken goal in the first, on the first shot the Kraken had in the game, to take the lead here still relatively early in the second. Now from there, the Kraken do play a relatively okay second period, at least in relation to how the Ducks were playing, which wasn't very good. So I don't know if I'd necessarily say the Kraken were playing well, but better than the Ducks. And honestly, I think there's some amount of the Kraken not able to convert being what really taints how they played in the second period. They do outshoot the Ducks pretty significantly. I think by the end of the period it was 17 to 11 shots on goal or something close to that. The Kraken definitely had the better of the chances, the shots on goal, and even had a couple more that really could have gone in pretty easily. A couple more they put off posts. Sprong had one that he puts off the post and then goes behind Dostal to the other side, which then got blown dead right away as the ref doesn't see that Dostal isn't sitting on the puck. It was clear to the other side. I think Sprong actually had picked it up and was skating away with it and maybe would have had a chance to shoot at the net with Dostal laid out in front of it. And if he just lifts the puck to the top half of it, it's a goal for the Kraken. But the Ducks catch a break there. The play's blown dead before the Kraken have a chance to get another chance on net. Then later in the period, I can't remember who gets the first shot off, but the Kraken put another one off the post that goes off the post, off the back of Dostal, and then McCann gets a second chance, though that too goes off the post. So yeah, the Kraken just hitting the red plumbing around Dostal constantly, but can't get anything between the two posts, and well, certainly not where Dostal isn't able to stop it. So who knows, maybe if those two things bounce differently, or the goal is a couple inches wider than it is, the Kraken score twice in this period, and we're thinking a lot more fondly about how the Kraken play in it. It also doesn't help, though, the Kraken do get two more power plays in this period, and neither one looked particularly dangerous. They might have gotten one okay opportunity on the second power play, their third of the game, but second of the second period. In the end, though, the Kraken power play goes 0 for 3 and just did not look very good all night long. Which is one thing against the Kings, or surprisingly even the Predators, who, even with everything going wrong with that team, they have the best penalty kill in the NHL at the moment. But it's another when you're 0 for 3 and don't look good against the Ducks, who have one of the absolute worst penalty kills in the NHL. So whatever's going on with this power play, they desperately need to get something figured out, mix things up, change up maybe just the whole way that you attack the power play, transition into the offensive end, as they've now started to have issues just getting the puck with possession across the blue line, even with multiple tries against, again, a Ducks penalty kill that, at least not consistently, has been able to figure out how to stop just about anyone so far this season. So yeah, it's a Kraken power play that at the moment looks a lot like the power play that we saw for chunks of last season and the inaugural season, where you honestly just want to call up Gary Bettman and ask if you could write a rule into the rule book to allow teams to decline penalties. But since that's not a rule yet, and yeah, even if it was a rule, no one would actually decline a penalty. Who knows, maybe it actually is okay and just no one would ever do it. Still, the Kraken head to the end of the second and start of the third, having come up empty on the power play and not looked good on it, and also now needing to come back from a 2-1 deficit. And then the first minute and 10 seconds of the third period happen. What a difference 24 seconds can make, as the Kraken, I can't remember if they even win the opening faceoff. Either way, they end up with possession of the puck pretty quickly, get into the offensive end. It's a pass from Riker Evans down to Jared McCann, way down by the low part of the faceoff circle on the left side of Dostal. McCann just kind of wheels around and throws a no-look, or maybe you got a glimpse of it over his shoulder. But either way, it's a beautiful spinning backhand pass as he flings it through the middle of the ice, through the slot to the far side, where once again, It's net front presence for the Kraken doing it as Burakovsky dives to the top of the crease. And just like with Wright early in the first period, he gets rewarded for it as it goes off of him just past the post and into the net to give Berkey his first goal of the season. Finally getting rewarded for all of the things he has done well. I think he's been playing very well since taking Eberle's spot along with McCann and Beniers on that first line. Once again though, even with how incredibly snake-bit Burakovsky has been early on this season, net front pressure and crashing towards the net can heal all wounds. For Wright, it got him a goal early on in the first period of his first game back after being a healthy scratch for 3 games. For Burakovsky, it gets him his first goal, having played every game for the Kraken so far. And also in a game where the Kraken had already put 4 or 5 pucks off of the plumbing around Dostal. This one bounces off of Burakovsky and goes in. It's not really even like he got his stick on it. In fact, he didn't touch it with his stick whatsoever. Actually ends up going off of his shin and into the net after Dostal, in another example of how well he's been playing in net, was able to get just a bit of McCann's pass and break it up with a little bit of a poke check, trying to prevent Burakovsky from being able to just tip it in as he slid into the crease with his stick. But as it turns out, all that poke was able to do was lift the puck off of the ice, still on the same trajectory. So it ends up made a push it from, instead of hitting his stick, to hitting his leg behind the stick. Either way, it instead lifts the puck off the ice, off of Berkey's shin, and dribbles across the goal line to give the Kraken their second goal of the game, still less than a minute into the third, tying things up. So everybody gets to take a deep breath as the Kraken are at least able to even things back up here to start out the third. They have not given up going to the net, even with the number of times that they've ended up hitting posts doing it. At the end of the night, even with the amount of pressure the Kraken were able to get, and I guess really more net front presence the Kraken were able to get in this game, it doesn't show up a ton in the stats. I think they were only credited for 4 shots out of their 28 that were beyond the faceoff dot, so that's not even talking about net front. That's just anywhere vaguely near the net. That the Kraken weren't getting a ton of chances from there, but they were still getting a lot of traffic around there, and that doesn't include the ones that go off the post. So if you include those, they probably at least double that shot total in and around the net. At the very least, though, what getting to the net does do is it at times takes away the eyes if it's a screen, or allows for redirected passes like Wright's goal early on, or sometimes just a fortunate bounce like with Burakovsky's here to start the third. All examples of things that you desperately need to be able to do in order to score against a goaltender playing as well as Dostal is so far this season. And at least twice it's worked out for the Kraken, even if the volume from tight to the net isn't high. The results speak for themselves. Of course, with all that being said, you don't need to necessarily always be overthinking it either. Sometimes it works to just fire off an absolute missile from the blue line, and just a few seconds after the Kraken get the faceoff into the offensive end following Burakovsky's goal, that's just what happens as Shane Wright wins a faceoff cleanly back to Montour. Montour skates in it, winds up, and blasts it into the top of the net over Dostal to give the Kraken the 3-2 lead. And in 24 seconds, or if you want to count it from the start of the third period, 70 seconds, the Kraken have gone from being down 2-1 entering the period to up 3-2. And I don't know if the Kraken have any plans to do a Star Wars themed night like the Mariners occasionally do, but it might be fitting with Montour firing off absolute lasers from the blue line, as this is his 7th of the season and 3rd in as many games. It's the first time in his career that he's had a 3-game goal streak as he continues to get career firsts here with the Kraken, and it turns a game that was feeling like it could end in bitter disappointment with an inability to score once again on the road into a pretty fun way to start the third, and it seemed to be infectious in the booth as the rest of the third period was filled with all sorts of general hilarious commentary from Everett and Enzo in the booth. Not that we're terribly unused to that with Forsland and Enzo in the booth, but yeah, it was a very fun third period to watch. For the Kraken on the ice, it felt like it was a better period from them. They seemed like they were getting up and down the ice a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother. They were getting around the same amount of shots on goal, so volume-wise it didn't seem that different, but the danger statistically wasn't quite there. The Ducks were actually getting more chances back the other way, and maybe part of it was the Kraken were just trying to limit the chances for the Ducks defensively and not make mistakes, especially as we get deeper into the third and the Ducks start to press a little bit more. The Kraken seem more to just focus on not giving up the tying goal than pressing to score again, although they do nearly score again. A bad shift from Anaheim allows McCann to get a wide open shot from the slot, which he just barely puts off of the crossbar and out, which is, yeah, at least 6 times then that the Kraken hit the pipes. But yeah, again, especially after the Ducks got there still pretty early in the period power play, that the Kraken kill off pretty well and actually get the better of the 2 chances on the power play comes for the Kraken shorthanded. It's, as you would probably guess if you watch any number of Kraken games, McCann and Gord that are the 2 guys creating that shorthanded chance. It always seems to be those 2 specifically creating the shorthanded chances for the Kraken this season. It doesn't score, but after that power play comes to an end, the Kraken do a good job of killing it off. The Ducks do get the better of the chances, I would say, in general. So I don't know if it was just rose-tinted glasses because the Kraken actually scored twice in this period with that exciting start to it and weren't able to quite get the bounce they needed in the second with the number of ones they put off the post. They came that close, but just weren't able to score. So maybe it just is that those extra couple of inches on those chances that turn posts into goals make the whole period feel better or worse. If the Kraken hadn't scored twice, or certainly if they hadn't scored at least once there early in the third, I don't know that this is a third period we would look back on as fondly. Either way, the Kraken are able to salt the rest of this game away. Decord does have to make one other very good save on actually the Ducks. I think it was actually after the Ducks power play. It doesn't really matter. He had to make at least one more very good save going from side to side and making a glove save on Zegras. So yeah, it's not like it was a perfectly played game defensively for the Kraken in the third. Again, regardless, they still managed to get the job done, so it feels fine by the end of it. Even once the Ducks get the extra attacker on the ice, they really didn't create much 6-on-5. The Kraken had a couple of chances to hit the empty net. Decord did have the puck on his stick behind the Kraken net with a little bit of space, and I saw him look to the other end of the ice and think about it, and if the Kraken had had a 2-goal lead, I think he might just have tried it. But especially since he's behind the net rather than in front of it, if that goes wrong at all, it turns into a tie game. So you just can't really afford to make that mistake. So Decord makes the smart play, even if I think everybody kind of went, oh, when they saw him pass it rather than shoot it. So, I don't know. He'll get it eventually. One more time then with this one for the Kraken. It's a game that I have a bit of mixed feelings about. Mostly good since the Kraken did win the game, and yeah, it wasn't always pretty, like I said way at the beginning, but they got the job done. They got the 2 points in the standings. In the end, a win is a win. It wasn't necessarily their best 40 minutes. It did kind of continue that trend of not starting out games fantastic on the road, even with the early goal. But that early goal was a sign of the one thing I think the Kraken did really well in this game, and although they got rewarded for it twice, still could have led to even more, and that was a significantly noticeable increase in net front presence, or at least guys going to the net and making an effort to get in Dostal's face, whether that was to get there for a chance on a rebound, to try and screen him, which none of the Kraken goals really come off of screens, but having that net front presence will do that, or Wright getting the tip in. There's just a lot of ways to score goals with net front presence, and the Kraken have had a bit of an issue with that, especially when they aren't able to score, like the last road trip or the game against the Kings. So again, even if it did only lead to the 4 shots on goal from in tight in this game, they still had all the ones that went off of the post that, had they been on goal, might have led to a couple more goals for the Kraken. And beside all that, even beside the 2 goals the Kraken do score from right up by the net, it's just a habit that if the Kraken can continue to do it, we'll be seeing a lot more goal scoring. And considering at the other end of the ice, this was the 7th straight game that the Kraken have given up 2 or fewer goals. If they can score 2 or 3 goals a game, they're going to start winning a whole lot of games the way that Decord is playing in net. Even Grubauer, the one start he got, they just didn't help him at all at the other end of the ice. And defensively, well, the power play weirdly has kind of been the worst spot for the Kraken. They continue to give up shorthanded chances and did again in this game. But otherwise, they're playing decent defense and getting fantastic goaltending. Finally, though, before we close things out entirely on this game and finish out with the Kraken 3 stars, there was one other big event that happened in this game that could have an impact on the next game the Kraken play, since these 2 teams will travel to Seattle to play on Wednesday. Theoretically, I would imagine on different planes. Either way, these 2 teams traveling at the same time to face in this home and home on the day before Thanksgiving. And that was that in the second period, in the back half of the second period, before the two Kraken power plays, Cartier lays a big hit right in front of the Ducks net on Leo Carlsson. And to me, it was an absolutely clean hit. It's shoulder to shoulder. Carlsson had just gotten rid of the puck. Cartier doesn't leave his feet. Unfortunately, though, it does lead to Carlsson taking quite a long time to get up off of the ice. And then once he does, he went right down the tunnel and did not come back out for the third. The hit from Cartier was not only a big one that Carlsson wasn't necessarily braced for, it is they're coming towards each other shoulder to shoulder. So again, a totally clean hit as far as the rules of the game are concerned. But it sent Carlsson, since it was right in front of Anaheim's net, into the post pretty hard. It looked like maybe the bottom of his ribs or somewhere on the side where there's not as much padding makes hard contact with that post, and then his head hits the ice pretty hard. His helmet comes off, so hopefully he's okay. Obviously, with a talented young player like that, taking a big hit like that and then leaving the game, that's going to rile up the bench quite a bit, and certainly riled up a couple of guys that don't necessarily, well, let's just say they don't have reputations for having the most in-control tempers on the ice in Zegras and Gudas. So Gudas comes right after Cartier as that happens. Actually, a couple of Ducks players come right after Cartier, and although Gudas kind of drops gloves and tries to fight Cartier, there's two Ducks there, so Cartier doesn't really know what to do and just kind of hunches over. The refs come in to try to break that up, but then Zegras comes in and slashes Cartier in the back of the legs. All of that leads to 5-on-5 play, which was confusing for a number of reasons. Cartier gets 2 penalties. He gets one for roughing with Gudas, which, I mean, I guess they both kind of got some pushes and shoves in there before Cartier just kind of tried to prevent getting hurt by a bunch of Ducks players. So, yeah, you trade the roughing calls with Gudas, but then he also gets I can't remember if it was interference or roughing. I want to say interference for the hit, which that penalty, and they talked about it on the broadcast, so I don't necessarily need to echo everything they were saying, but I don't necessarily get that penalty. It felt like one that they just made as a response to how the hit was received by Carlsson, and especially with him hitting the goal, it ended up going a lot worse than if it had happened anywhere else on the ice. But even as you watch the replay, the hit happens, Cartier hits Carlsson, the ref is watching it the entire time, and it isn't until Carlsson is stopped, laid on the ice, not moving anymore, that then his arm goes up in the air. It's not like his arm goes up in the air right after Cartier lays the hit, like you would see if it was, a clearly dirty hit. He waits until, that guy looks like he might be injured. That was a pretty big hit. All right, sure, penalty. So, I don't know, it just seemed like a weird way to officiate the whole thing, especially to then just lead to 5-on-5 afterwards rather than 4-on-4 even, as Zegras gets the slashing call on top of Gudas getting the roughing. So it was a whole mess. It surprisingly didn't lead to a whole lot else in that specific game. Well, I shouldn't say it didn't lead to anything else the rest of the game. Cartier was getting pretty clearly targeted in the third period, and not in a dirty way. There was no dirty hits on him or anything like that, or even, uncalled for slashes across the knees or something like that. Just, it was pretty obvious that a couple of players, Gudas in particular, were going out of their way a little bit more than usual to lay hits on Cartier whenever they possibly had a chance. Anyway, with all that being said, and we'll see if that leads to anything more in this following game coming up on Wednesday, we'll finish things out with the Kraken 3 stars, as always brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help contribute to deciding these Kraken 3 stars after every game, you can help support a little bit more than you already are by going to the link down below and supporting on Patreon as well. With the first star, I'm going to go with Shane Wright, getting right back to it as he comes right back into the lineup. Sorry, I had to do it at least one more time. It's honestly kind of hard not to, for whatever reason. Either way, he gets the Kraken on the board first there with that early goal, and then gets the primary assist with that one face-off for the game-winning goal on Montour's one-timer. And even outside of that, he had a fantastic game in the third period. He had one shift that comes to mind in the third period where he 3 times gets the puck. I mean, the Ducks get the puck out of the offensive end. They're trying to transition it, and then Wright just comes along the boards, gets the puck, and shoves it back deep into the offensive end, forcing the Ducks to reset. That happened 3 times in immediate succession. A couple of times, I think Wright's even trying to go off to finish his change and just sees, I could waste a little bit more of their time. All right, whoop, there you go chase the puck again. So, a fantastic game from him at both ends of the ice. Second star, yeah, boy, it's tough. I think I'm going to go with Riker Evans. Yeah, he had a fantastic game as well. 2 assists on the night. So the young guns for the Kraken playing pretty well in this game and making a big difference. And then the third star, I'll stick with the one that Patreon felt the most confident in this one, and that was Brandon Montour. Gets the game-winning goal and just, in general, continues to be the best player the Kraken have, certainly on the defensive end. Any given night, he might be the best player the Kraken have out on the ice, with guys like McCann potentially challenging that, or obviously Decord in net. I mean, Decord kind of getting snubbed of a star here in this one, though I do feel good about Wright, Evans, and Montour as the 3. If I could have a 4th star, it would easily be Decord. He does obviously keep the Kraken in this one with just 2 goals allowed on 23 shots, I think was the total for the Ducks by the end of it, maybe 24. So another very good night for Decord as he continues to just, I mean, at this point, it's not really even a surprise, which is kind of nice. With that, though, let me know what you think down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars of the game would be, who you would take out to put Decord in if you wanted to change things up, and how you feel about this next game coming up against the Ducks once again in Seattle, where if this game didn't necessarily make you feel the most confident about how the Kraken are playing right now, especially coming off that game against the Kings, well, the good news is the Kraken have been playing a lot better at home than they have on the road lately, so maybe being back home will get them right back to scoring more than 2 or 3 goals a game. As always, though, we'll just have to wait and see, and until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.